Welcome back to Listen to the Helpers, a podcast created by the Fred Rogers Institute to elevate the voices of helpers everywhere. Fred Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" Today we're joined by Dr. Drew Petersen, an ENT physician in West Virginia. At the end of today's episode, stay tuned as Kenzee and I reflect on our discussion with Drew in the context of Fred Rogers' legacy and our own work at the Fred Rogers Institute. Drew, we're so thankful to have you on this episode of Listen to the Helpers. To start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us who you are, where you are, what you do.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm happy to be on this episode and kind of honored just to even have the chat and the questions. Um, yeah. So who am I? My name is Drew Peterson. I live in Fayetteville, West Virginia, and that's where I grew up. So I've been raised here my whole life. I'm a ear, nose, and throat physician that works here in town. And let's see, I guess I've been back in town for, you know, 6, 7 years. Was gone for an extended period of time for college, medical school, fellowship, and kind of like that phase of life. So I've been back in my hometown for going on 7 years now, here working. And that's kind of been a fun experience. Hometown that you know well, but almost like re-inviting or relearning your hometown, has been a fun experience, and it's been great. I think a lot of the success there is my wife has enjoyed it a lot here, so that was a little bit of the gamble. She's from Southern Ohio, and she's loved it as well. So it's just been great. And yeah, I'm a ear, nose, and throat physician, surgeon. I see patients in the clinic 2 days a week. I do surgery 2 days a week. And then Fridays, which is today, well, I had time for this. I try to leave it open as like personal space, but it gets occupied by, often by work. But then just other tasks, life tasks, kid stuff. And so that's kind of, what my work week schedule looks like. And ear, nose, and throat. We do, see a lot of patients, wide age range, a lot of pediatric patients, but also all the way up to geriatric patients as well. We kind of do like our classic ear, nose, and throat pediatric surgeries, tonsillectomies, and ear tubes and adenoidectomies and stuff like that. But then we do a lot of skin cancer care, skin cancer surgery, thyroid health, thyroidectomies, lots of sinus health, sinus surgery, rhinology, kind of the broad term for that. And so it's just kind of it's pretty diverse, what we do from like a work standpoint, which is part of the appeal of it.
Wow, you do so much, and it sounds like you serve a really wide range of people as well, which I feel like is kind of unique because there are so many professions that you either specialize in pediatrics or geriatric or somewhere in the middle. So that's really interesting that you get the opportunity to serve so many different kinds of people.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's true. And then, being like hometown, I grew up here. Like I know a large percentage of my patient population. And I used to at the beginning, I kind of would get like a little nervous or have some hesitancy about caring for all these people that I have connections with in one way or another. And it used to be kind of nerve-wracking, but it's honestly flipped to where it's now like almost more the comfort zone. And I would rather take care of, or I don't want to say rather, but I am certainly comfortable and find a lot of value in just taking care of the people that I know through life. But it's a everyone's got like some goofy memory of me from childhood or whatnot, and you know, so it adds a kind of a funny, unique flavor to it all.
No, for sure. So, like, I have a two-part kind of question.
Yeah.
What led you to be a doctor in general, and what led you to that specific specialty?
Yeah, cool. Good question. And I think because my answer might not be like typical of all or you know a lot of physicians. Um, so let's see. So my parents are physicians. They are family practice docs here in the same town as well. They're both retired. And you know, I just like repelled the thought of medicine my whole life. It was not at all what I thought I wanted to do. Just, I don't know, it's what they did. So I just didn't want to follow their path just because. And I, you know, was certain I could figure out whatever else I was going to do on my own. And so, you know, I just kind of like had no interest in it until really late in college. And I kind of was just searching for the easy, what I felt was like the easy path. You know, like I was just flipping majors every semester. You know, I took the 101 level class of every major that existed, you know, no fulfillment in any of it. And, you know, just like really struggled to kind of like figure out what it is that I was trying to do. And I was really, really, really late in the college, you know, in the undergrad course of things. And I kind of had like this family weekend where I just, you know, some family conversations, and it led me to think, well, I'm going to go and try out some of these science courses more to prove some of my family members wrong than anything else. And so I did, started taking chemistries and whatnot, and like I liked it a lot. It was really fulfilling, and you know, it was, you know, doing the quote harder classes was actually easier, probably because I was interested and because it was almost like the hard work became fulfilling, and then it was a driver itself. And so then it was easy. And so, you know, I went from like taking the bare minimum college credits to have full-time student status to then the next semester having to get special permission to exceed the maximum hours in order to like get all the prereqs in. And again, it was like this giant increase in workload, but it was easier somehow. And you know, so I kind of say that like the lesson there is that you know, sometimes trying to, you know, avoid hard work is actually a lot more hard work than just do the work. Um, and so yeah, so I did, you know, it was very late in college, ran through all of the pre-med requirements, um, you know, had fulfillment in that. Um, Proceeded into medical school, and that's kind of how my medical school journey started. It was pretty abrupt. It was not something that I had planned for, you know, throughout my life. It was actually something I had repelled for most of my life. Um, and then once I was in medical school, I knew I liked surgery. I knew I liked the hands-on stuff. Um, you know, I did the surgery rotation with a surgeon that he was kind of rough, kind of mean, kind of treated me horribly, you know, on a daily basis. And at the end of it, I still liked it. I was like, yeah, I could, I'm still okay with this. So I knew I wanted to do something surgical, that it drew me. And I got recommended about ENT. It was a good mix of clinic experience where you connect with patients and all of the surgical side of things. And started, you know, learning about ENT, started doing rotations to kind of explore it. I loved it, and just kind of moved forward from there. And I'm very thankful for ENT as a specialty because I think it just fits my personality really well, and it fits some of my personality strengths. And so when I'm training the medical students these days, I'm always telling them to like pick something that aligns with your strengths rather than your weaknesses, so that, you know, it'd be very easy to be fighting against your weaknesses your whole career, and that would be really crummy. um And so, that should be a big driver into like what you do in medicine, like what specialty, rather than whatever you think it is, the whatever, like how financially rewarding it is, or that you love orthopedics. So you think that it's exactly what you want to do. Well, um, there's some other like nuance to think about, like picking things that align with your strengths so that you're not fighting yourself for your whole career.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and doing what you want to do and what you're passionate about rather than what you're supposed to do, quote unquote supposed to do. Like you were thinking what you were not supposed to do was maybe be in a medical field, but then following your passions led you to where you are today. That's such an interesting story because I feel like, I mean, you started off by saying that your story is not like most who go into the medical field, because I feel like you do hear a lot of stories about, oh, I always dreamed of being a doctor. I always dreamed of doing XYZ, and that was always my life goal. So the fact that you made a, like you said, a pretty abrupt switch to that field and that it ended up being the best thing for you, that's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I tell this story a good bit just working with med students and residents. And so, everyone thinks life and their career or whatever has to be this, just like the way, whatever the planned methodology is, and it's just not true. There's a ton of possibility for kind of the DIY
Hmm.
version of education, career, personal development, whatever it is. You both have value.
Hmm.
The standard way is great, and the alternative DIY version also can be excellent. And so,
Yes, and it's okay to change your mind too. I feel like that's something that a lot of young people don't feel comfortable with, because it's, again, you hear those stories of, oh, I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always wanted to be this or that. So that's what I did. And then
yep,
it gets ingrained in you of, oh, well, I should be following the path that I've set since I was 5 years old. But it's actually okay to change your mind. And in a lot of cases, it's good to change your mind because and then end up finding your passion and what is really meant for you.
sure, yeah. My undergrad degree is in geography,
Oh,
and that's
wow.
because that's what I was kind of like closest to, and I had interest in it. I mean, geography is fascinating in its own way, and so it was kind of the quickest way to get an undergrad degree and
Hmm.
do the pre-med prereqs. Um, and so I guess the backup plan was to, get my geography degree and probably be a teacher in some way.
So it sounds like either way, you wanted to go into some kind of profession to help people to some extent. So that kind of
Sure.
leads me into my next question for you of, what do you think it means to be a helper?
It generally kind of revolves around the thought of, giving of yourself to better someone else. And usually at your own sacrifice, which might just be your time, um, and which is a big sacrifice. I mean, like the way we spend our time is our story. That's like, who we are.
Mhm.
And but you're giving of yourself to at the betterment of someone else or something else. Um, and you can kind of think of it too on different scales, all of big impact, but like individually helping someone, where it's this person needs this assistance and you can provide that to them, um, versus like bigger scale, like leadership roles in companies or groups, organizations, whatnot, are also you're helping people in a very impactful way, but it's more like bird's eye view. And it's so um, the as I was thinking about it, the more like direct you are, like one-on-one helping someone, you kind of get the immediate feedback of that right away.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful. It's like, I mean, one of the best things about my job is I do get all this positive feedback immediately. And it's so wonderful. Not a lot of people realize the impact that they have on people's lives as much as they should. And that's a really sad statement. People should know how impactful they are to other people. Um, but I get a lot of this nice like direct feedback, and it's great. The more you move out into like more bird's eye view, helping of others, leadership roles, or even politicians, I was thinking, your impact is kind of like removed from you. It's in the future, it's further away. It might take time for
Mhm.
that help to like be manifested and for you to see it or feel it. And I would imagine it makes it harder to stay excited about the role. And it makes it so that you have to be like more diligent to stay grounded, stay focused on what it is you're doing. Um, and people, politicians get a hard rep these days. And I don't want to join in that voice. I think it's probably they don't get the immediate feedback of their efforts, but it is their responsibility to stay focused on what it is they're doing and not let all of the distractions and all the other extra input kind of creep in, which is sometimes good, sometimes not good. Um, so the more direct you are, I guess, with the help that you're providing to people, it's probably easier to like just feel the value of it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and that's I feel like how fortunate that you are in a position that you can get that immediate and direct feedback of like, "Oh, I am helping somebody every day." No matter what kind of day of work it is for you, whether it is talking with medical students or meeting with a patient or performing a surgery, like you are directly helping someone each day.
I try to.
No, for sure. And you've kind of touched upon what you do, throughout our conversation today. But is there something that you wish people knew about what you do?
And like within the career, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I guess, how much surgery is involved in ENT, I think is something that some people know, some people don't. Um, and it's fun. And again, it's back to that, it's very direct result. Even within the world of medicine, some docs, they're doing great things, but it's not like here's a problem I need to fix with my hands and get the immediate feedback. And so, surgeons are definitely immediate feedback individuals, and I'm guilty of that as well too. So, I guess, how much surgery is a part of it is, I guess, one statement. The other one I guess I would say is, um, I end up doing a enormous amount of kind of like lifestyle, non-surgical lifestyle medicine with patients. And I think it's a very like underappreciated, undervalued part of medicine, all the way back to, our medical education. It's not like this huge component of it. And, lifestyle medicine, getting into the details of, how someone lives
Mm.
is often so valuable, more valuable than the surgeries that we do, etc. And so I've kind of embraced that through one, just personal interest. I like the topic. And number two, the patients kind of demand it, whether they know it or not. Not everyone needs surgery. Not everyone needs a medicine. In fact, most people don't need a surgery or medicine. Most people there's some nuance in their life that is causing said symptom or whatever it would be. And diving into that is is very valuable for folks. And so we do a ton of that at my practice. Um, partially because I've made it a priority, so like all the providers at my practice, it is a focus of what we do. So lots of time spent talking about what people drink, how do they hydrate through their day, what do they eat, what's their food quality like, their processed foods, We really get into like a quality of the food that you eat, um, what's your movement like, your exercise, um, with the quality of the food that you eat, but also just what's the quality of everything, that comes in, that's part of your day. So that includes the food you eat, but also the way you spend your time, the content that you bring into your field of view, your screen time, your electronic content. If you fill your life with crummy food and um, crummy ideas, crummy content, you end up with poor mental health problems and poor physical health problems.
Do you
Yeah.
find that so with that lifestyle medicine approach, do you find that your patients like are very receptive to that for the most part, or do you find that there are people that come in and they're like, "No, I came to you because you're a doctor and I want medicine," or "You're a doctor and I want surgery. That's why I came to you, not to tell me what I should and shouldn't eat or exercise
Yeah.
or drink or whatever it is." So I guess what's like the general response from your patients to that approach?
I think it's a bit of both, kind of all the above of what you just said there. Um, I uh, I think it's generally well received. I know that part of my kind of like one of the values that I bring as a physician is how I communicate with patients, and like I kind of have a way of getting into tough topics with them in like a non-judgmental way, and they seem to kind of open doors and let down their guards to me, that I know that like some other providers might not pull it off as well. um, and again, that's back to recognizing your strengths and weaknesses and leaning into them. Having discussions with patients about their weight or their food quality or whatnot. It sometimes is hard to do in a non-judgmental way, and I've kind of figured it out. You speak bluntly, but also politely, no judgment in it. And like as soon as you do those things and you get into those spaces, everyone is kind of starved for that type of interaction. And so even like the tough patients, as soon as you like kind of get into those questions, people very quickly soften up. Often, like we have emotional visits all the time. People come in for a surgical consult. We're quickly not talking about surgery. We are talking about something lifestyle. We're talking about like their sleep quality. Okay, well, why aren't you sleeping well? Well, a bunch of emotional stress, traumatic stuff through life. We're into tears, and so in the end, people do find it very valuable. They're very appreciative of it. They'll joke, like my staff will joke, people come in for this. We spent 30 minutes with you. In the end, all I told you to do was like drink more water and get better sleep. And it's and it's like, but I don't think people are leaving upset that I didn't do anything for them or didn't offer them anything. Um, I try to like get people connected to appropriate resources, counseling, nutritionists, whatever like kind of those next step options and resources are. I'm not trying to just say, hey, eat healthy, period, get out of here. It's, we got to get into a little bit of the what and the why, and then get them connected to resources that they can get some more education themselves.
That's really great to hear that you are seeing your patients as the whole person and not just whatever issue or problem they're coming in telling you that they have or that they think they might have or what they might need according to their perspective, but you're really seeing them as a whole individual and really getting to the root of like who are you and what do you need as an individual, not as just a diagnosis. So
Yeah.
that's really refreshing to hear and it's really wonderful to hear. And it sounds like your patients are very lucky to have you. And
Thank
I'm wondering, do you have some kind of story about a time that you remembered your why for doing what you do?
like that question right there. It's almost like the things we were just talking about, like when you ask someone like, are you happy at home, or what's your sleep like? It's kind of like a emotionally vulnerable question where it like really quickly, people could get just emotional about that because sometimes they might not have a quick answer to that. Like what is your why? And some people don't have a quick answer or even an answer at all to that. Um, and so it's one thing that like we should all spend a moment thinking about. And that's good content to like put in our lives. Not an Instagram feed. So that is an example of one of those types of questions. And when I read it, I think I probably had a similar response of it's like, well, crap, like, what is my why? And I myself, can have some of that. Um, I um, I've got children now, and they're 4 and 7, and I think like the easy answer is family, so immediate family. My wife's wonderful. Yeah, my kids are great. And they're a giant driver to things. As are my parents and my sister. They all become both like your driver of why, as well as kind of like your inspiration to like, how you got here in the first place. Um, so it's like kind of like a somewhat cliche, like easy answer, but it is also probably the most honest and real driving answer for me at the moment, at least.
I love that you mentioned that that is a good question for everyone to think about, of like really thinking about what is your why and what makes you remember your why. I think no matter who you are and what field you're in and what level of whatever field you're in, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been in your field for 50 years, then that's always important to think about and really ground yourself in reminding yourself why it is you do what you do. So I'm glad that you pointed that out because I agree that is something that everybody should think about.
Oh yeah. Our current culture too, it just wants to like take and take and take from us.
Yes.
So it's like so easy to just be um in the motions of work, email, responsibilities, eat, drink, sleep. And at the end, it's like, well, like, did I have any fun? Did I enjoy anything there? Was there
Uh,
any fulfillment in that? And you repeat that over and over and over again, you kind of like lose who you are. And that's just clearly not healthy. So whatever way you can kind of remind yourself of your why. And sometimes too, you could like, what is your why? You might realize it's a selfish answer. Your why might be, that I just want like more free time to myself to play video games, or more more money. It might be a financial answer, and if that is your answer, you might want to spend a moment of additional reflection there, because there's probably a richer, um, more fulfilling answer in there.
yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you so much. So thank you for speaking with us today, Andrew. I just have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I guess I would just, kind of like echo some of the things that we talked about, where it's like, you know, simplicity in life is often, the key, you know, the in that, helping others, that, the common saying is that the person giving gets more out of it than the person receiving the gift or the thing, the Christmas present. And it just couldn't be a more true statement. And the more you just kind of succumb to that fact and realize it and embrace it, um, the quicker life gets better. Um, and the more you can just keep things simple, be honest with yourself and with others, it all kind of just naturally wraps into helping and caring for other people. And and it's applicable to all jobs, all levels of life. And, there's no one that's above or below that concept.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you again for spending some time talking with us about what you do and your helping profession as an ENT physician. We are so thankful to know you and to have you join us today.
Awesome.
What a fun conversation with Drew. That was so lovely to get to know him and get to hear about his work as an ENT physician and surgeon. Kenzee, what did you think about that conversation in terms of the six fundamentals of learning and growing?
Yeah, it was absolutely great. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know much about like an ENT physician, so I feel like I've learned a lot today talking to Drew. In terms of the fundamental, I really associated solitude with a lot of what Drew talked about because he did talk about like, you might, especially for remembering your why, reflect on what is your why? What does that look like? Is it a selfish why? And if it is selfish, how can we think about giving and what that might look like? So when I thought about what Drew was saying, I really thought that it's important to engage in solitude when thinking about those reflections, I guess. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that perspective on solitude. I was also thinking about self-worth when he was talking about how he sees his patients as people, not just patients, and really um, likes to go with that approach of the lifestyle medicine rather than just assuming, yes, you need medicine or yes, you need surgery, but like let's really take a minute to figure out who you are and what you need as a person. It makes me think about how Fred Rogers often said, "I like you just the way you are," and really tailoring things to someone as an individual, not as like a prepackaged deal.
I thought it was really heartfelt that Drew took the time to like, especially because he talked about questions of care and how often his patients don't get those type of questions, like ones that are very emotionally vulnerable and that he often, they don't get asked that question a lot, especially from those around them because they may not have that kind of community. So that really stuck out to me as well.
I love that he also made a point to mention that he tries his best to connect his patients to resources. So, like you said, when those people don't have opportunities to talk about the things that he's asking them to talk about, he'll offer resources that he can offer regarding counseling or any other, medical professional recommendations. But I really like that he mentioned that because I feel like surprisingly, I don't think it should be surprising, but in my experience, surprisingly, a lot of times when you go to a medical professional and you're seeking out resources, they're a little bit caught off guard and they're like, oh, I don't know what to offer you, or I don't know what's in this area. I know that's happened to me personally when it's like, oh, I'm looking for this resource on this thing, and they're like, I don't know. And that's a little disheartening to hear. So the fact that he not only offers the resources but doesn't necessarily wait to be asked for them, but is saying like, I see you, I think this could help you, so here's what I'm gonna offer.
I do think part of that is because Drew is from his, he works in his hometown, and has those resources available because they, A, have probably been available for some time, or B, his parents are also like retired physicians, so that probably plays a part in it as well.
Yeah, what a cool thing to be able to be a helper in your hometown at that level. I feel like there's an element of, like, having to relearn your community from a different perspective, but also it sounds like he's very thankful for the position that he's in, where he's in, because he really is helping his own community. He's helping his own people and really giving back in such a special way to people of all ages in his community.
Right, exactly. And I also really like he used the phrase when he was talking about, figuring out his path in life, like a DIY version of his career.
Yes.
That was so cute. And I feel like our work with college students, we should probably start using that in our,
Yes, a DIY path to life. Isn't
yeah.
that what we all have?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Kenzie, do you have anything else you would like to add to this reflection on Drew's conversation?
Yeah, Drew really brought up like a simplicity of life. And it
Yes.
really made me think of like Fred's thoughts on simple and deep, how the simple things in life, there can be a very deep aspect of them and they're super important. So from there, I think there is that connection of like, even though it may seem simple, in reality, there is a very deep aspect to it.
Yes, I love that, and that idea of simple and deep is something that we ground our work in at the Fred Rogers Institute. We try to keep that in mind in everything that we do so that, we have this reminder of something with depth doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be quite simple and have a lot of depth to it, and we hope that our work has that impact on people. I think just from our conversation with Drew, it seems like his work has that impact on people, that it's approachable yet meaningful. And Fred Rogers' work definitely had that impact on people, and it was definitely simple and deep.
I agree. No, once again, thank you so much, Drew, for joining us. That was a great conversation. The Fred Rogers Institute advances the legacy of Fred Rogers by investing in the strengths of families and caring adults to support the healthy development of children. To learn more about the Fred Rogers Institute and our initiatives, visit fredrogersinstitute.org and follow the Fred Rogers Institute on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.